Carrie Bradshaw is the most ADHD coded woman. Carrie and Big are trying to be friends.
Do they actually have anything in common? There's such a morality attached to being good with money.
Where did all my money go? I know I made some.
Oh my gosh, I feel like that all of the time.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Help Me I'm Poor, the money podcast that's more drunk at Vogue than balance owed. I'm Claire.
And I'm Ellie, and each week we discuss how money shows up in some of our favourite pop culture, from the classic to the nostalgic to the contemporary.
And in case everyone doesn't know by this point, this is a mini-series just about Sex and the City. So if you haven't listened already to previous 3 episodes, go back and listen, unless you particularly love season 4, which according to Reddit people don't.
Which I find quite mad because so much happens, although I do understand some of the complaints, which we'll come on to, about likability.
Yeah, and I think this carries on into season 5 as well, which is quite short.
Yeah.
But people are not fans of that either. I think most of these characters do really frustrate people every now and again. And I think that season 4 is kind of peak that, isn't it? So if we do a bit of a recap of what happens this season. So Carrie and Big are trying to be friends. All of her friends disapprove.
Yeah.
And you can see that it's not really working. We'll come on to it in a second, but they just don't have friend vibes ever.
No, and interestingly, I did see some commentary around their relationship more generally, saying that do they actually have anything in common?
What do they ever talk about?
Other than chemistry, she, as we see, he's into the jazz, she's not really into it. She doesn't really get much.
Fair.
She's into fashion. He never seems to show any interest in fashion or even in her literary interests. So what is there that they can be friends about?
I don't know.
If you remove the chemistry.
Yeah, all they really have is one-liners, isn't it? And lots of eyebrow raises.
Yeah.
Basically. Chris Nutt did have great eyebrows in this for those sort of suggestive moments. But so that's Carrie, and she goes through a hell of a journey this series. Then you've got Charlotte and Trey, who are separated, but they keep trying to work things out.
Yeah.
And at one point, things are sort of going well enough for Charlotte to quit her job and become a homemaker. And that's kind of in anticipation of starting a family, but they don't anticipate these fertility issues that they have, which is sort of a really major storyline for Charlotte in the first half of this season.
Yeah, and I guess it continues as well, really.
Yeah, it definitely continues after she meets someone else later on. But they finally separate for good, which is kind of the catalyst for one of our really big talking points today. And then the other side of that coin is that Carrie rekindles things with Aidan, gets engaged, then almost immediately breaks things off because she freaks out. She's not ready to commit, and he's so pushy, really, really pushy. With her to commit to him on his timeline. Yeah. And then Samantha briefly becomes a lesbian.
Yeah.
Then she does start one of her, and I would say that her relationship with Maria is sort of one of her big love relationships. It's one of her first forays into the world of monogamy that we've seen.
Yeah, it is actually. And I think it's quite interesting that they chose to do that really with Maria as the character. But it's the first, one of these few times where we see the same partner time and time again for a few episodes.
Yeah, and I think that then sort of leads on to this relationship that she has with Richard, where she's I've caught monogamy from you guys. I didn't used to be bothered. And so that's kind of what they all get up to this series.
Yeah, there's so much to cover off in this season. I think we could talk about this for hours, but I guess there are a few key things we really want to get into. And I would say that I'm guessing most people listening, the first thing they're going to think about with this is the apartment.
Yeah.
Do you want to just give a quick summary of what happens?
It's kind of all in the fallout of this disastrous second attempt at a relationship with Aidan, where, Carrie kind of really pushes her way back into his life. then freaks out at every step of the way where she's asked to like commit to more than just something that's comfortable to her.
Yeah.
But it is really sad, the breakup episode, actually. I hadn't remembered it being quite so like genuinely sad, because I am an Aidan hater. It is, I love John Corbett, but I think I'm just like, that may have ruined Aidan for me. But watching this, even like, he doesn't love her, he just likes the idea of her. He's like, constantly asking her to change, and she panders to him. Some of the scenes where she's like, the episode where he won't let her back into like the nook, and it's because Big has called her apartment. I don't know what she's trying to do, like holding on to a friend that she had an affair with while having a relationship with a person that she cheated on.
It's not going to work, is it?
No, exactly.
Okay, just a quick pause for a word from our sponsor, eToro.
You know how in Sex and the City, the girls could talk about literally anything? Sex, breakups, babies, body hair, nothing was off limits.
They even talked about money sometimes, but weirdly not really investing or growing their wealth. Like, why were they talking about their date's net worth, but never their own?
That's why we love eToro's Loud Investing initiative. It's about making investing a normal part of the group chat.
Not just a thing that men talk about while they're at golf.
We want money conversations to feel like brunch with your best mate. Honest, fun, maybe a little bit chaotic, but super helpful and real.
Exactly. And with eToro, investing feels social. You can learn from others and build confidence without pretending that you've read The Economist from cover to cover.
So if you've ever felt like the odd one out in money conversations, eToro is your invite to the table.
No shame, no jargon, just women investing loudly.
This episode of Help Me I'm Poor is sponsored by eToro. Search Loud Investing with eToro to find out more and join the movement.
And just so we're clear, everything we talk about here is for information and education only. It's not financial advice, personal recommendations, or an offer of any kind. Always do your own research.
eToro is a multi-asset investment platform. The value of your investments may go up or down, and your capital is at risk. But yeah, so in the fallout of the relationship, Aidan has bought her apartment and the apartment next door because they were going to knock through and create like a bigger apartment for them to have their life in, I suppose. Because he's been planning to propose and then does propose. But this means that now that they've separated, Aidan serves her court papers, asking her, gives her 30 days to decide, I think, not to like actually like buy the place, but 30 days to make a commitment to either buy her apartment back from him for what he paid for it, which Miranda's like, this is really fair, but I think he only bought it like a couple of months.
Yeah, so actually probably hasn't gone up that much in value.
Or she has to vacate. And so this is the episode that I think a lot of people think of immediately if you say like Sex and the City and money to them, because this is the episode where it's all put out on the table.
Yeah. And I think up until this point, there's a lot of, I guess, hints and question marks about like Carrie's financial situation. And we know that, you know, she spends a lot of money. We also know that she earns money writing, but we have no real concept of, you know, like what has she got in the bank. And I feel like at this point we really see, okay, well, you know, can you afford this apartment, and how are you going to pay for it, or are you going to be homeless?
Yeah, and she says to Miranda just before they do the like famous shoe calculation, a line which I can really sort of identify with, which is, where did all my money go? I know I made some. Like it's this like real thing, which I think is like a thing for a lot of people of like, I know that I've been earning a decent amount of money, so where has it all gone?
Oh my gosh, I feel like that all of the time. And then she goes, doesn't she, to see if she can get a loan, and she's told that she's an undesirable candidate for a loan, which is quite harsh. I mean, again, I feel like I'm kind of quite surprised by that, given like the lending culture that we used to have. I mean, even today, I think it's like, it's a lot tighter. It's a lot harder to borrow money now than it was like 20 years ago. But even still, it's not that hard in some respects.
I mean, from what I've heard, pre-2008, if you were self-employed, you just had to write down like what you earned on the back of like a fact pack it and give it to them.
So it must have been really bad for her to like be an undesirable candidate.
But I think also it's a really important storyline because this does represent a bit of a turning point for Carrie, I think, like in terms of her like growing up and starting to take herself seriously. It's not that you can't like, and this is a point that I quite often come back to. It's not that you can't be like a fully fledged, like brilliantly functioning adult and still have money troubles, because you absolutely can. But I think it feels like it's the start of Carrie kind of taking herself a bit more seriously.
Well, it's like the first time she kind of has to face kind of real consequences in a way, or has the fear of having that, like that homelessness. And obviously we know, you know, she's probably never going to be completely homeless. Like she could live with one of the others. Yeah. But it's that kind of lack of security that really kind of confronts her in a way that it hasn't really before, where her apartment, which is like so central to her life, could be taken away from under her. And
she goes to see another apartment, which is not rent controlled. So it's like $2,400 a month. And like, she's like horrified. And this woman has such high standards and such little financial sense. I think the conversation that they all have around the table is really fascinating in actual fact, because obviously the big confrontation comes between Carrie and Charlotte. Yeah. But I really like the conversation that they have, the four of them as well. And I think that Miranda and Samantha come off really well in that conversation. So, and actually they're quite kind of wonderful in this episode in general, both of them. They sort of give their opinion and their advice, but without judgment. In actual fact, like Miranda sits down and does the calculation. She's like, you know, 100 pairs of $400 a pop, $40,000. There's your down payment. But she's not. You don't get like judgmental vibes from her, really.
No, and maybe part of that's because, could you be friends with Carrie if you were that judgmental about her spending? Like, it's part of who she is.
It's true.
In a way, like if you really disagreed with it, I'm not sure you could put up with being around it all of the time.
Yeah, and I think when she goes to that brunch, it's just after she's gone to visit Big, and she's gone kind of under the pretense of like, you're an investment banker, show me how to turn my like $900 in checking into a
down payment.
And he just gives her a check for the money. We don't see him do it, but she shows up to brunch with this check. Miranda says, don't cash it. When a man gives you money, you give him control. I think that's really interesting. Yeah. Given that what we know about her and what we've discussed in previous seasons, with kind of, she was like on the other side of the coin with Steve. So it's interesting how her perspective's different, I think.
Definitely.
But Samantha says, it's just money, who cares?
Yeah.
It's fluid. Someone needs it, you give it. You need it, you take it. And I think that this is most closely aligned with like my fundamental philosophy on money. Samantha for sure is the most generous character on the show.
Yeah.
Like, and I really liked that opinion of money as a more abstract concept that's a bit more fluid and a bit less self-serving was put out there.
I think it's so interesting. I love this conversation as well because it does present those really different perspectives. And I do understand Miranda's perspective. And I think, you know, there'll be a lot of people listening who will be in that camp of the like, don't take the money from Big because that gives him that level of control. And it's not to say that like I don't agree to a point. Like I do understand the concern.
Oh, for sure. There. Especially given what he was like when he was pushing her into the affair.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You don't necessarily want to owe a man like that.
No, but
grand.
I do think there is also, like you say, there's this element that we sometimes forget about money as like a tool. Money as something that serves a purpose, or it's like a means to an end. It's not the end goal. And I think so much of like the conversation and narrative around money, particularly in like the personal finance space, like it really is like obsessed about money being the end goal and like accumulate it and hold on to it and like it's this symbol of like you and your success or whatever, like rather than seeing it as just something that kind of you pass around, like you say, and that can be given and shared, and like if someone needs it, give it to them, and then that kind of belief that maybe it will come back to you as well.
Yeah.
And I do think I have a bit of that attitude as well. Like I go through different phases where sometimes I do struggle to like let it go completely, but at the end of the day, like what is the point of it just sitting there?
Yeah. Can't
And
use
like
it when you're dead.
you can't use it when it's dead, and like Big has plenty of it.
Oh, so much that he would not even notice that
Exactly. The
amount.
fact he just kind of writes a check. I don't know. Do you think he would hold it over her if she had cashed it? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, but then Miranda and Samantha go on to offer her half each, which is like insanely generous of them. Miranda's saying like, I've got about half that, which I'm not sure the wisdom of like offering all of your savings to your financially irresponsible friend, especially as she's pregnant at this point. But, like just that generosity is a really starkly contrasted with Charlotte's like awkwardness around it. Like she just refuses to talk about it. She won't even address it. She literally says we shouldn't be talking about money, and then the vibe after that is completely off.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think it just epitomizes, I mean, it's not a surprise when you know Charlotte as a character. Like she's very like prim and proper and like
very conservative,
old school, like, oh, we shouldn't talk about money. But given that her friends are so open about everything else and are being so open about money in this context, that she still feels like that about that topic. I know that like with other topics, she's also a little bit of a prude, but I do think that it's quite stark that when it comes to money, again, it's such a hard line for her that she feels so uncomfortable.
Yeah, and she's all right talking about it when she was like, like negging Steve for being working class. She was fine with it then. But no, I do think that conversation is quite a good representation of what sometimes does happen if you talk about money in like not necessarily like a safe or comfortable space. If you've got someone who is a bit judgmental or who is just really uncomfortable talking about money, they do sometimes clam up, and and it does sometimes like really send the vibe off. I don't know if you've ever had a conversation like that. I definitely have, where at least one person in the room is like, I'm not participating in this.
Really? I can't think of any examples, but I think that's because, I don't know, my kind of like approach and how I always recommend like people approach talking about money is like to kind of like lead with openness. And obviously here that doesn't necessarily work, but I do find that most of the time, if you go into a conversation and you are willing to kind of disclose information about your circumstances, then other people are, but maybe that's also just the people that I'm around. I think it's so, I do wonder with this though as well, like what do you think it would be like if you were in that situation? Like, because I do think it's quite amazing how generous like her friends are offering to be.
Like the fact that she's got this problem and literally the people that she knows are falling over it themselves to give her the money. Like that's a nice problem to have. And actually both she and Charlotte pissed me off in different ways and at different points in this episode. I certainly am not a Carrie apologist when it comes to this situation. Like
no.
How many times like if you are living in a city will you just get evicted for like a reason that's not even your fault? Like it's happened to me, when landlords have wanted to sell up or whatever. But that's not okay for Carrie to deal with that adversity. I completely agree with her, like talking this problem through with her friends, but she does sort of make it everybody else's problem. And actually the scene where she goes and confronts Charlotte is excruciating, and I did hate every second of it, but I do also think it was a really important scene to have in this episode, and also just on TV in general. I don't know if we see this level of like discomfort play out about money that often.
No, I think that's one of those things that I love about this show is that I do think it really gets to like the nitty gritty of issues like money, which we don't see that much.
No.
And I do think, you know, it's such a tricky one, like who is in the right, who's in the wrong with this situation. Like Carrie has such a sense of entitlement, I think, when she comes into that conversation. Like,
For sure.
and I do think maybe part of that is because she's been like offered the money by so many other people as well, that she probably does feel a bit like that. But then there is this question that's like, you know, Charlotte, she doesn't owe her anything, but also like she didn't earn that money.
Yeah, and she says that she earned her apartment, and I just, if they had been
You
married for like
negotiated.
12 years and she'd endured like all kinds of stuff, but she married like a nice man who wasn't right for her, and then he gave her everything that she wanted, or he goes on to give her everything that she wants in the divorce.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but I think some of it is coming from Charlotte's issues that she's having this episode as well, where she's stepped out of the workplace because she thought that she was going to be a stay-at-home mum and a housewife, and that didn't work out for her, and now she can't get a job, and so she has to volunteer. And it's what I think is really interesting is how different it is from two different perspectives, because Carrie's perspective is, you've got so much money, you don't have to work, you're volunteering. And Charlotte, the truth is that Charlotte's like, no one wants to hire me because I stepped out of something. And we said this, I think, back in episode 1, that we thought that the art world in New York would be really hard to get into, and she can't get back in. So I think there's kind of and I've actually had, I know that we've spoken about this before, I've had really similar conversations with friends myself, where it's kind of a like having money versus having career clout and earning power. And that dynamic is so interesting, because actually if you're on the side of having clout and earning power, you are like, okay, but where's all my money? But if you're on the other side, there's something so impressive. And like, you know, Carrie says to Charlotte when she's talking about a plan to pay her back, because Charlotte offers her the ring that she keeps being tempted to wear, which isn't like good for her, to sell to get the money for her down payment. When she's talking about a repayment plan, she says that she's been offered $4 a word at Vogue.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's a lot. Most people get to. And then in the end, she's offered $4.50, which I'd love to get paid $4.50 a word.
The good old days of
the
writing.
good old days of journalism.
Yeah. But I also think, I mean, this is a slight side note, but I think that there's a real lesson in Charlotte's decision making there as well, where she left her job in anticipation of all these things happening. Because I don't know about you, but I have seen this on Money Diaries on the Facebook group so many times, where people are saying like, oh, I would like to have a baby in the next like year or so, here are all of the things that I'm thinking. And it's not a given. Like, it's so not a given that you will get pregnant when you want to get pregnant. And this is exactly what plays out here. But it just amazes me how much I think this happens in real life as well, where people make huge decisions about like their career, their housing, on the assumption that something's going to happen and that they're going to have this baby on this timeline. And I've seen a few videos recently as well from people who've been struggling to conceive. And it is like really sad, because they've kind of admitted that they had this idea in their head of by like the end of 2025, well, I wouldn't be able to do that because I'll be pregnant kind of thing. And then it's coming up to that point and like they're not, because a year later they still haven't been able to conceive. And I think, again, it's something that is so out of our control. Like when it comes to money, there are so many things that we try to control, and trying to plan for a family is like a layer of it that you can't always control. Like you can set yourself up like Charlotte does. You can, you know, quit the job, you can be the homemaker, but you can't guarantee that you're going to get the baby to fit into it all. And so with hindsight, I wonder whether she would have just like kept the job and kept working, even if she didn't need the money.
That in itself causes quite a lot of tension, like in her friendships, of people have opinions about that. And you know, in this big confrontation, Carrie says to Charlotte, you've made a lot of mistakes as well, and I wasn't there judging you. And I do think that this hits upon something that I see time and time again, and I've definitely seen it like directed at me, which is that people judge other people way more harshly for their money mistakes than they do for like other kinds of mistake,
like romantic mistakes.
Exactly. And they feel so much more liberated to judge like openly as well. I think it's really, really interesting.
I think it's because there's such a like morality attached to like being good with money.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, drives me insane, because I think, you know, like there isn't a being good with money isn't a thing. Like, like it's so subjective, but people really, I think, get a sense of pride out of like being seen to be good with money and having lots in the bank, even if actually you're just like hoarding it and you're really stingy and you're not very generous to anybody, and like it's not really.
Or you just got it in a divorce.
Or in a divorce settlement.
It's an important conversation that they have, and they do repair quite well. So there's like quite this neat resolution on both sides because it's TV. And the conversation that they have like towards the end is really lovely. So there's like a confirmation of trust from Charlotte, which I think is so important in these situations.
Yeah, and the fact that they discuss the repayment plan as well. I think like there is that conversation, because I think so often when we're talking about like friends or family and money, one of the sticky points is like, okay, but you need to be really clear about what's going to happen. Like, is it going to get paid back? And the fact that they really clearly address that, I think, is like a really good example.
Yeah, and Carrie's really clear that it will take her a while to pay it back as well. I think sometimes, especially when it's like if it's the bank, you're not trying to overpromise them, but like when you'll be able to pay it back by, you just have an agreement. Whereas with friends and family, I think you quite often the temptation to like overpromise.
Yeah, be like next week
quite a lot. But yeah, I think it is really constructive, and it's kind of worth the awkwardness. But I actually put a poll out to ask people whether they thought that like friends and money can mix, and it like people did say like the no's won it, but it was much closer than I thought. It was kind of in the 40s for yes under certain circumstances, and sort of the 50s for no's. And then I had a few DMs from people kind of describing situations where like a friend had helped them out, but they had boundaries around when they paid it back. A friend of mine said that when they bought their first flat and were completely skint, a friend who really was really well off lent them $5,000, and they were just about to move away, and were like very happy to do it, and they offered as well, and then it was paid back on an agreed schedule. So I do kind of think that it can work. I think you have to be very careful.
But I think, I mean, maybe this is like controversial, but I do think that like you can't avoid money coming into friendships. Like whether you think you can or not is a different question, but like it's such a present force in friendships, particularly as you get older. I feel like, can you really like avoid it altogether?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, one of the things that a lot of people said is that they never lend friends money that they need back. And I think that's potentially quite a good philosophy to have. And also, doesn't it just depend on your circumstances? Yeah. We said this in like Bridesmaids. Honestly, if I was a millionaire, I would, and someone needed $5,000, I'd just be like, fine, have it. Like, and it because. But whereas if you're kind of like, if you have some parity and it's costing you something to lend that money, it's a really different situation. I think you have to consider it way more carefully.
It is. Hence, but then that idea of like not lending someone, a friend, some money that you need back, that suggests like a lack of trust as well in a bit of a way, which I think is a bit sad. Like even if I wasn't a millionaire, even if I had the ability to like lend £1,000 to a friend that needed it, that was a close friend, I think I would want to do that.
Oh yeah.
Like as long as it wasn't going to kind of financially like put me in a bad place. If it was just sat in my savings, for example, I feel like I would want to do that, because as long as I trusted them, and as long as we had a conversation about how it would come back, then I kind of feel like, maybe I don't know, I feel like I'd be a bit mean if I knew they needed it.
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I agree with everything you just said. I would do exactly the same.
Like, as long as like I had the money, like obviously if I had to go and take a loan out to do it, it would be very different.
Yeah,
but I don't think a friend would ask you to do that. But
no,
if it's just sat in my premium bonds or whatever, like earning me some money, but it could really help them out. I kind of feel like, isn't that like what being a good friend like is? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I do agree. I mean, my tendency always is to sort of like give away as much as I can, even if it does come as huge personal cost to me. So like, I think I have to really like check myself on that, and potentially sometimes be a bit overly cautious. But I feel glad when it gets kind of resolved. Yeah, because this does mark the beginning of a new like financial era for Carrie, I think. Yes. Which does go on to like become quite ridiculous by the time we get to and just like that territory, but we can talk about that later. Before we wrap up, I just wanted to mention as like a side note that early on in the series we've got 2 episodes with Ray, the jazz musician. Who Carrie's like, oh, we've got such great chemistry, and she meets him while she's out with Big, which is very awkward. So awkward. But she realizes that he's not like super into her, he's just got ADD, so she was just this hyper focus for a while. But I would like to make a very bold claim here, which is that Carrie Bradshaw is the most ADHD coded woman on television, and someone with an ADHD diagnosis myself, please allow me to make my case. So she is chronically either distracted or hyper-focused. Her impulsive behaviour is out of control. It mostly shows up in relationships and then obviously also shopping. Yeah. She often mistakes emotional intensity for compatibility, mistakes that I've made before. And she has time blindness. She's always behind on a deadline. She's always late. She's the story of my life. She's so chaotic, but also very impatient when she's waiting for anyone else. She's got massive rejection sensitivity dysphoria, RSD. So just examples: when Aidan doesn't want her back, she hounds him. She gets completely obsessed with him. She stalks Natasha after she's had an affair with her husband. And also then later in season 5 with Nina Katz and the face, she obsesses. She has overheard her say that she likes to go to a certain pretzel stand, and then she makes Stanford go to the pretzel place with her to try and bump into her. And Heather Graham weirdly shows up in that episode. But I think Carrie's RSD is a whole character in the series, and it drives a lot of her decisions. Yeah. She's got demand avoidance. You tell her to do something, give her advice, she just does the opposite. She's hyperverbal and overthinking. And then there's like all the money stuff, so compulsive shopping, credit card debt, that awful situation that she gets herself into where she's kind of impulsively said yes to a lot of things in her relationship. But I also think that a lot of her good qualities sort of come from her ADHD traits as well. So she's creative, she's really quick, she thinks on her feet, she's very emotional, which has its like good and bad parts. So it's a blessing and a curse, but I just wanted to make my case for Carrie Bradshaw's ADHD diagnosis 20 odd years after the fact. Yeah, I feel like there's not much you can argue with about that. No. It's pretty black and white, but there's just so much in this season, and I'm kind of sad that we don't have like 4 episodes to deal with season 4. But I mean, we have covered a lot, and there's so many things that I would just love to hear people's views on, particularly around friendship and money and how people navigate it. But on that note, I guess we should probably wrap up. Yeah. So please, if you've got anything to say on this episode, just leave us a comment on Spotify, or even a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. Please. They help us to find new people. We read them religiously. So if you put a comment on there, we'll definitely read it. We'll either reply to you or it will just make us very happy.
Or slide into our DMs as well on Help Me I'm Podcast. We are always there, always having a chat with anybody, because we love reading all of your thoughts and feedback.
Absolutely. And we're also on Substack under the same name, so you can come find us there as well for weekly takes on stuff like this, also topical things that are in the news, interesting things that we've seen, etc. So yeah, that's enough from us.
Thank you so much. Bye.